Hello everyone, welcome to the tutorial on ARSCADA, which is an ignition module developed by Pramaj Technologies. So in this tutorial we shall see how to download and install the ARSCADA package on ignition. So the step-by-step procedure is given in the GitHub page. So the first step is to download the zip file from this location. And so you will get ARSCADA master.zip that you have to unzip somewhere and then enter the ARSCADA master folder. So you will get an ARS folder here. So we have already done that. For example, we have unzipped the file into D:. So it contains a folder called ARS and there's a README file which is the same as what you see on the GitHub page. So these are the contents of the ARS folder. So we have to basically copy this and paste it onto C:, because there's a default location where the ARSCADA files are expected to be there. So yeah, this is same as what we have seen there on the D:. So we have to copy it here. So that's the first step. Now there are two backup projects, ignition projects are kept under this documentation folder. So we'll just have a look at the structure of this ARS folder. So there's a docs folder which contains these are the two ignition project. This is for ignition version 8.0 and this is for version 7.9.10. You can install it on any other versions, but we will see that process later. So and then it contains documentation for all the components that can be configured onto ARSCADA screens. So basically it's an HTML page and which gives what are the components that are supported by ARSCADA, which can be placed onto the virtual tours. So for example, this is a bar. So these components have to be configured in an XML file by defining the properties, the bar width, bar height, different font colors, font size, and the tag which drives this. This is the ignition tag. You give the fully qualified path for the tag that drives this. So the next component is a meter, which has got similar properties, and there's a meter tag. This is where the binding takes place, and other things define the properties, say for example radius, background color, border color, etc. Then there's a scale, then there's a multi-state indicator showing the status of an equipment, say on, off, trip, or auto, or manual, and things like that. And there's a static text for annotating the virtual tour, for defining, giving labels to various components, equipment. Say there's a boiler feed pump or a condensate extraction pump. So you can place some description of that static text. There's no dynamic component here coming from the ignition. Then there's a cell, which is a dynamic component. So you can define a tag. The whatever tag is bound to this, it'll fetch a description and units automatically from database and display time value. And this is a single row of table, and this is a one single page table for displaying a group of parameters, group of ignition tags that are associated with one particular equipment. Then there's a multi-page table. If you are display value, a lot of values, say more than 10, 20, 100 values, then you can define in a multi-page table, so it will automatically display a next previous button. and this is how you configure. And this is a cursor position symbol for during editing of the placing of the components on the virtual tour. This symbol is used. It will display a crosshair on the screen, and it will display the coordinates, the XY coordinates as well as the polar coordinates for placing the components. And then this is the status window, which shows status of the user who is logged in, what is his access rights, and what's the cycle time of update, whether you're licensed or not, and the current time, etc. So yeah, so these are the various documentation on all these are all the images of that we saw. So the next folder is a tool folder. So you have to display, you have to store. Uh, Here we got only one virtual tour for the sake of demonstration, but you have to have all your systems, each one folder for each virtual tour. Supposing your plant is divided into some 100 or 50 different subsystems. So you have to have that many folders, and each one will contain a virtual tour. So a virtual tour basically consists of a number of panoramic images. For example, this is a panoramic image of the sample living room that we are going to see in the demonstration. So you have to have these type of virtual tours. So they will all be configured in an XML file, tour.xml. So we'll see the structure of this later on. And there's an HTML file which basically invokes this tour.xml file. And this XML contains these scenes. So this is the structure. And so this is the most important folder that you will be editing for configuring your virtual tour. So once again, this folder should contain all your subsystems, and each subsystem will have all the scenes or the panoramic images. You may have, each virtual tour may have some 10-20 images which you can walk through. It can take you through that subsystem, and then each one will have components placed, and those components will be defined in tour.xml. And there's one more folder here for keeping the multimedia components. Supposing you want to keep a video which explains how to operate a particular equipment, or any HTML page which defines some step-by-step procedure, or gives some images explaining the operation maintenance of that equipment. So they can be kept here. This is recommended structure, but you can always suit yourself to. So this path has to be defined properly in the tour.xml file. So the next folder is viewer. Basically here you don't have to do anything. These are all system files, and only one file that you will be editing is this Embed Host. If you open this, basically this defines what's your host name. For the demo, my PC has, my host name is as you can see here. To get the host name, you have to just type host name, enter, so it will display. So admin PC is my host name. So that's what is given here. It is case insensitive. And the project name, I have configured ARS. This is, project name is case sensitive, that you must remember. So I have my project by default are called ARS, but if your project is something different, then you can change the name here. And this is the port, which is again fixed, but you can change it if there is a need. But by default, it should not be changed. And this is the tags file. So basically, all your the tags that the ARSCADA uses a tag database, local tag database, which is a subset of ignition tags. So they are all defined in this file, tags.txt, which is actually a JSON array. So it's a subset of any of the ignition tags. We will go through this in detail. So this is the default location of the tags file. That is, if you actually each virtual tour can have its own tags, because it's not necessary to have all the tags retrieved from ignition to display a subset of the plant. So you can define a tags.txt file in a separate for each virtual tool separately, so that you always fetch smaller value of the data from the ignition server. So these are the contents of this is the only file which you will have to edit for the first time, as long as your project name and the host name doesn't change. And this is a plugin. So this contains all the various components that we have developed for you to place them onto the virtual tour. So apart from that, there's a system list.tag. This is also an important file which is directly under ARS folder. So this contains an HTML page where you define the main menu for your augmented reality project. So if your project has got say 10 or 20 or 50 different systems, so they'll all be listed here. And then this is basically just a href tag in the HTML page. You have to define the name, and then this is the path. This is where the HTML page will be opened. That is basically, it is pointing to this location, to and name of the subsystem and tour.html. This is the binding HTML file which will open this virtual tour and load the components which will be displayed on those virtual tours as defined in the tours.xml file. So this is what is linked here: tours residence tour.html. That is this tours residence, and again it's relative to the current location. So it is kept under C:\ARS. So it starts from under ARS. So related to the current location. Okay. So this is also an important file that you must remember. And then there is another file which is the tags.txt file, which is actually the database. So this is a database for the ARSCADA, which is a subset of ignition tags, ignition database, and here it is defined as a JSON array. So each tag is one JSON object, and there are some 16 different values, 0 to 104. So about 15-16 values have been defined just for the purpose of demo. And these are the tags that are defined in the ignition project. Okay, we'll come to that later. So this is the fully qualified tag path as the name of the tag, and its type is float, or it can be float or int, or it can be boolean. So you have to give the flag appropriately and the definition of that tag and its engineering units and the field width for display, how many characters it will occupy in the display, and the decimal value. These are the default values which we can change while configuring the components. And this defines the condition, that is alarm limits. So this is again an array called conditions, and it's an array of other JSON object, and each object defines what is the condition, what is the limit, and what is the label. So this is the 0th element, which is called normal state, and if the value of this tag is greater than this limit of 75, then it's called in high state. If it is greater than 80, then it's called very high, and things like that. So you can define up to 0 to 9 states for each tag. And for an integer value, you have to give a equal to the integer limit. If the variable is equal to 1 or 2 or 3, something like multi-state indicator, you can give different call it different names to that state. It could be auto or manual or anything like that. And if it is a boolean, then it has to be, by default it will be false. False is condition 0, that is here for example. And if this is false, and for true value it's becomes state 1, and this is the label for that state. It will be called in closed state. So yeah, that's the tags file. This is also very important. So this is the common file which will be used by default for any scene that you load, but for every scene it is possible to override. So if you have defined a tour.tags file here, this will override the tags file which is defined. This is the default tags file. This is the database, and if you are defined a tags file under a particular tour, then this will override that. That means this becomes the database for only this tour. Because it's not necessary to load all the tags, all the thousands of tags from ignition into this if your tool uses only 10% of that. Okay, so the next step is to edit the embed host file, as I explained to you earlier. Here the sample project what is given has got these values. Now obviously your host name will be different, so you have to get your host name by entering this host name in the command prompt, and you will get the host name, enter it here. And if your project name is other than ARS, we recommend you to just give project name as ARS for the sake of this demo, and let the default for the tags file be the same. So you have to basically mainly edit this and ensure that your project name is same as ARS, and it should be capital case sensitive. If you have named your project capital ARS, then you have to change this also capital, otherwise it will not work. So the next step is, the embed host file you have to edit, and then you have to ensure that your ignition is running, which is basically it is running in trial mode, and then you have to import the project. So you have to basically go to the editor, and through the file menu you have to import the project which is kept under this folder. In a folder, one of these two. If it is a ignition 7.9.10, then import this project. If it is 8, then import this project. And after importing, make sure that you save the project. It's very important, otherwise it will not work and you will not know what's going on. Yeah, and after you import, you have to make sure that you have the WebDev module installed. In fact, before importing the project, it's better to ensure that the WebDev module is installed. So for that, basically you have to go to this configuration section and see what are the modules, and WebDev module we have installed here. If this is missing, then you have to go to the archives folder, that is inductiveautomation.com downloads archive, and here you have to choose whichever version you have installed, 7.9.10 for example, or if it is any earlier version, you have to choose the appropriate version, and then scroll down to the module section. So these are the core modules. After that comes device connectivity modules. Here, this is where the WebDev is kept. So you have to basically click this, and it will download, and then through the install or upgrade module, click this, and then you choose the file wherever you download it and install it, and then make sure that the WebDev is working, is installed. So the next step is, once it is installed, then you're almost done. You have to then open in a browser, open the you have to give a path name as HTTP, your host name, whatever your host name. This angle bracket should not be there, just the name, then the port, and here the project name you have to change, and then systemlist.html. So the URL is something like this. So for our sample project, the URL will be, admin PC, and ARS is our project name. So if you click on this sample system, it will take you to the it takes you to the top level floor plan, and this is what we have configured in the XML. We'll have a look at the XML configuration also. So here this shows if there are any alarms in this system, that any of the tags are violating the limits that they are defined. So you click on that, it tells you these are all the tags that are violating shown here. So if you click on any of these, so it will take you